first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to Fox 12 Now. Thank you very much for joining us. We are live here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, and we start live streaming every weekday right around 1 p.m. Pacific, and we appreciate you joining us here. I say that a lot because I mean it, so whatever platform you're watching on, thanks for doing so. And if you're not watching live or watching afterward, be sure to check out all of those other segments that we have as well. Right now, we're talking about something that seems like an unlikely combination. I'm talking about the state of Oregon and conserving cheetahs. Now, a lot of people here, if you're from the Northwest, are probably familiar with Wildlife Safari, which does have a lot of conservation programs, but I'll be honest, I didn't realize how big of a role they play on the world stage when it comes to cheetahs. And I found out because I interviewed the woman who founded that program, and that is Dr. Laurie Marker. And she started this back in the 70s. She was there on and off for decades at Wildlife Safari, ended up moving to Namibia in Southwest Africa and creating the Cheetah Conservation Fund and a bunch of things associated with that in order to save cheetahs, which are thankfully much better off now than they were in the 70s, but there's still a lot of work to be done. But regardless of that, we talk about this and go through it, and I think it's really interesting to see the connections here between what has happened here in Oregon, especially Southern Oregon there with Wildlife Safari, and saving the world's fastest land mammal. There we go. I knew I'd get that out. But anyway, here we go. Let's go ahead and play this right now. It's really interesting. It's Dr. Laurie Marker. Well, Doctor, thank you, very much for being here with us to talk about all this amazing work that you've been doing and this amazing career. And I think to start off, I would love to go back to when you first came to Oregon, and just to give everybody a bit of a context on how it is that you got into saving cheetahs from where you began.
Well, I began at the Wildlife Safari, which is in Winston, Oregon, and I started there in 1974. And coming into Oregon at that point in time, it was a long time ago, and the Wildlife Safari has really grown since then. But I had a wonderful 16 years with the safari and helped develop their programs and their cheetah program. And obviously the cheetah won my heart and took me on a lifetime of experiences.
And what was it about, Wildlife Safari, especially, back then, and obviously, as you mentioned, it's grown since then, but what was it that was special about that drew you in there and wanted you to work with them there in Southern Oregon?
Well, I actually moved into Oregon, and I was one of the pioneers of the Oregon wine industry. And I had the third bonded winery in Southern Oregon, in all of Oregon. But my background was with animals. And so I had moved to Oregon from California. One of those people, I'm sorry. Back in those days, we called it, don't Californicate, Oregon. I think a lot of people now have since come there, but those were a long, long time ago. But the Wildlife Safari had just been built, and it was right around the winery that I had. And my background had always been with animals. And so I went in and said, my background's with animals, and I lived down the road. And I took over the veterinary clinic. And from there, the cheetahs, and I worked with all of the different animals, but the cheetahs just won my heart.
And so you're here running a winery and decide, okay, yep, I'm going to work with cheetahs. Very normal progression there for a career.
Absolutely.
And what was it about the cheetahs specifically? With all the other animals that they were working there, what is it about the cheetahs that drew you in?
Well, I think I didn't know anything about cheetahs. I grew up on the back of a horse, and I'd had a goat dairy and dogs and rabbits. So I had a lot of other animals that I raised and worked with, but I didn't know anything about a cheetah. And actually, at that point in time, there were these wonderful billboards that said, follow the track of the cat. And there was a cheetah on it. And I said, well, what is that? I don't know what a cheetah is. Well, come to find out, it's the fastest land animal. And the more that I asked questions about it, I was told people don't know that much about cheetahs. I said, well, how could that be? They've been revered by kings, emperors, and princes for 5,000 years. How do we know nothing about them? And that's really what got me started, is that the more I found out about them, the more I found out that we as people knew very little. We were losing them in the wild. They didn't breed well in captivity. And here we had an opportunity to share with the world something very special about this amazing animal. And I guess I just took it on as a responsibility that I wanted everyone to know about the cheetah.
And so you're there at Wildlife Safari, and you're working with cheetahs, and there must have been something special about that program there as well. It seems where they were you had this opportunity to really study the cheetahs a little bit more, and you took that, and then made another pretty big leap.
You think so? Yes. Well, my work with the cheetahs continued, and so we did develop a very successful breeding program. Actually, over the years, we developed the most successful breeding program in all of America, and the Wildlife Safari is still famous for its breeding program. And on a global scale, we were the third most successful in the world. So I was fascinated, but that then turned into another opportunity, which was to find out, gee, could a captive-born cheetah learn how to hunt? And if so, how? And all of a sudden, I find myself in the middle of Namibia, Southwest Africa, in the middle of the 1970s, with a cheetah named Kayam, of which many people in Oregon knew Kayam. And I took her to Africa, and my job was to find out if a cheetah could learn how to hunt. And that started my field research, where I taught her how to hunt. However, I also learned that farmers were killing cheetahs by the hundreds. And I thought, is it really because they're killing all their livestock, or is it a conceived thought that they're killing them? And so that's really what I wanted to find out much more about, is why were they killing so many cheetahs, and did they not realize that this animal was one of the most rare species on Earth, the fastest land animal, and we were losing it? Well, that was a long time ago, and that's what got me into Namibia. And of course, I came back to Oregon, and from there developed a lot of the captive programs. So the species survival program, I'm still the international cheetah stud bookkeeper. All of our early research around the cheetah's genetics all was done there in Roseburg, or in Winston at the Wildlife Safari. And then from there, I just decided that nobody was doing anything to help the wild cheetah. And after going back and forth to Africa many more times, I decided that it was time to go to Africa and save cheetah.
And make that move and launch all of these things that you've done there. I mean, let alone all of that research that you were doing there at Wildlife Safari in Winston. And so when we look at that, from where you were then to where you are now, can you give everybody just a little bit of an understanding of the organization that you have there in Namibia, and how massive really it is?
Yeah, great. Yes. Well, from that point in time, I then moved to Namibia, and I moved here at Namibia's independence, which was in 1990, and set up the Cheetah Conservation Fund, which is to save the wild cheetah. And I'm based here in Namibia. We've got about 150,000 acre reserve, but also a model farm. And it started slowly by my going door to door and talking with the farmers to find out more about their farming practices, their livestock, their wildlife, and what they knew about cheetahs and other predators. And from there, basically set up a model reserve, a model farm to work with the communities throughout Namibia, but actually throughout the world, to help people learn to live in harmony with a predator, which farmers don't really necessarily like on a global scale. Myself being a farmer, I have tried to help explain that we can actually live in harmony together.
And figuring out how to coexist with these predators. And looking at what you've done now, you mentioned that cheetahs were being killed. They were not a lot of them left, not a lot known. And if you look from where you started there in the 70s to where you are right now, what's the status of the cheetah really globally, as far as the population, but also what we know about them?
Well, I think that's a great question. We are still losing the cheetah, although we've been based here in Namibia for over almost 35 years. And we've developed a huge center in all of our programs. And our programs really started on finding out how cheetahs live, so the basic ecology of them. And that was the baseline of what we know about the cheetahs today. And they have huge home ranges, upwards to 1,500 square kilometers. That's about 800 square miles. We know a lot about their basic biology, but then finding out how they were living on the land with the farming community. Cheetahs are not found in protected areas. So 95% of all the cheetahs here in Namibia are outside of protected areas on livestock farmland where there's a lot of wildlife. And so our programs really revolved around working with farming communities. And so we developed a program called Future Farmers of Africa. We've got an Anatolian Shepherd Kangal dog livestock guarding dog program where we've bred and placed now over 800 dogs to the farming communities, which that program also was working in Oregon, down in Roseburg and Winston when I was there in the early 70s. But today, the world population of cheetahs is only about 7,000 individuals. They are found in about 33 populations, of which 20 of those populations are under 100 individuals. So they are already a species that's genetically compromised, but these small numbers keep getting smaller. Our two strength areas really are that in Southern Africa, Namibia and Botswana, where we have about 1,000 cheetahs each. So 50% of the population is down here in Southern Africa. And then that larger population up in East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania, which have about similar. And then we also work in the Horn of Africa, which is the area around Ethiopia and Somaliland, where there are potentially around 500 individuals. In that area now, we've had to set up an entire new organization there, another center like we have here in Namibia, in Somaliland, to try to stop the illegal wildlife pet trade. So we're working on a variety of different levels, but everything has started from our work here in Namibia, which much of it has actually grown out of the work that we did in Oregon.
Wow. I mean, and talking about, Oregon and Wildlife Safari. So coming up here, you're going to be making this trip and coming back home. So can you tell everybody what it is that you're going to be doing here?
Well, I will be coming back into Oregon, and I'm going to go into the Wildlife Safari, where I haven't been there for quite some time. We've always had fundraising events that have taken place up in Portland. And so the safaris usually come up there and I'd see them. But so it's been a number of years since I've been down into the safari, and I will be there at the Wildlife Safari on, I believe it is the 2nd of October.
Yes.
And then I'll also be up in Portland as well on the evening of the 3rd and for the 4th of October. And another thing that's really interesting, I think, about our work in Oregon and Namibia is that we have quite a relationship with the Oregon-Washington University system. And for probably over 20 years, we've had anywhere from 2 to 4 student interns from the university system who work with us. And so we've got a very big internship program here in Namibia, and we get a lot of Oregonians. And so I'm quite proud of that as well. And the programs that we actually work with are, we do have a full-scale veterinary clinic. We've got a full-scale genetics laboratory. We're also a full ecological center, and that of animal science and livestock. So altogether, we bring in a lot of different aspects that as a training facility, we do a great deal. And so it's fun to have Oregonians here also.
I love that. And, for everybody here in Oregon and the Northwest, what do you think is the most important thing for them to know about the cheetah programs that they have down there in Wildlife Safari that have obviously, taken you to Namibia and everywhere else? But what's important for them to know about it?
Well, that it is a very special facility. The fact that it is, and it was built in Southern Oregon, mainly because there was land there, and it looked an awful lot like Africa. And as a safari park, it's not a zoo. So the animals are actually living free and allowing them to breed. Many of them are rare and endangered, like the cheetah. And the cheetah program from the Wildlife Safari is one of the most important breeding programs in the world. And it's kind of exciting that it is there in Oregon, and really think that everybody in Oregon should be really proud of the work that is being done down there, from the research, the breeding programs, and not just the cheetah, many of the other species that they're very involved in as well. The cheetah, I believe, is a legacy just because of the years that I'd worked there, and the fact that so many people in Oregon knew of Kayam, and now there's a couple other Kayams that have been ambassador cheetahs from the wildlife safari, that many of the school children have come down to the wildlife safari, or we've come to their schools to teach them more about endangered species. Oregon, I think, is a very, very special state. It is still got wilderness and wild to it, and Oregonians have definitely that pioneering feeling. One of the other very big programs that we've started here in Namibia also came from that of living down in Roseburg, Oregon, and that was the fact that we've developed a habitat restoration project here in Namibia. And we've got a lot of problems with an overgrowth of thorn bushes, which is caused from overgrazing of the land, especially in a very arid environment. And so, living so close to many of the timber operators, I started seeing timber trucks go through with chips on them, and I thought, there must be some value in wood chips. Well, we've now developed a Forest Stewardship Council certified biomass program here in Namibia that opens up habitat for cheetahs, and at the same time allows grass to grow and wildlife to come back in. And it's really helped affect the economy of the country as well. So there's been some interesting aspects about that of Oregon to that of Africa, or looking at livelihood development in other countries. So Oregon still has nature, and it's a very special state. And I would just encourage everybody who lives in Oregon to care for your wildlife and work together on solutions that, for instance, our livestock guarding dog program, I was called years back by some of the farmers there in Oregon saying, "We heard about your livestock guarding dog program. What is it?" Well, we raise a breed of dog, which is a Turkish breed of dog that's been around for about 5,000 years. The dogs grow up with the livestock. So whether it is calves or it is small stock like sheep, which are very abundant there in Oregon, and our dogs protect the livestock from predators. And so they bark loudly, and they will fight to the death if they have to, but usually predators don't want to be engaged in a fight. And so predators, through avoidance, stay away. So I believe that there are ways that we can live in harmony with nature, and that's one of the things that we've developed here in Namibia, and I always say with a lot of help from our Oregon friends, and believe that we should share those messages on a global scale, that our environment and our wildlife is very important, and it is something that we can live with, and we should harmonize with our environment and do all that we can. And I think good Oregonians believe that as well.
Absolutely. Well, wow, Doctor, thank you very much for having some time to just share, some of your story and some of everything that you do here with us. And obviously, everybody can. You'll be back here coming up, so we'll get everybody the dates and locations and all of that. But I really appreciate your time. And I will say, as a native Oregonian, I do have a picture somewhere. I have to ask my mom for it, of me at Wildlife Safari with one of the cheetahs when I was a kid, and it's one of my favorite pictures. I got to get a hold of it. But it's just so interesting and fascinating to know how all this work here locally for people to understand, like, globally, what kind of an impact that can have, and what's come from over here and what you've been able to do. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing, and just sharing all this information with us.
Well, it's really nice to know that I probably met you back then.
It's a good chance. Yeah.
So, but also I would welcome everyone to go to our website, which is cheetah.org, and learn all the programs that we're involved in, because together we can make a world worth living in.
Wow.
So
Well, Doctor, thank you very much. It was very inspiring and really appreciate you joining us here for Fox 12 Now. And congrats and safe travels. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
thank you very much. It was wonderful to talk with you.
All right. So, again, an interesting conversation there, learning so much more about Oregon's role in cheetahs. And I did find the picture. So there it is. That is me and my brother, and then family friend at Wildlife Safari. I insisted that the cheetah's head was with me, and my brother wasn't very happy about that. I do remember that from that day, but nonetheless, Wildlife Safari, right there. And thank you everybody for joining us again. This is Fox 12 Now, and we appreciate you tuning in to all the different segments and coverage that we have here. We get to have these longer form conversations. Sometimes we go out in the field. Sometimes we have reporters here with us to discuss in-depth stories that they're going into, or maybe it's breaking news. So you never know what's going on, but you can always find us here between 1 and 4 p.m. This is when we're live streaming, but you can watch all of those segments afterward. Fox 12 Oregon YouTube channel, KPTV.com, or of course the Fox 12 Oregon app coming up at 1:30 p.m. If you are watching live, which is in less than 10 minutes. I had to check my clock there. We will have Eric Gordson from Around the House Northwest, and you probably noticed some of that rain yesterday, and he's going to have some tips and tricks on what you can do to make sure that your home is ready once it starts coming down more consistently. There's probably some things you've forgotten about that you should take a look at. So he'll have those for us and a preview of this week's episode of Around the House Northwest. So we'll gear up, we'll get ready for that. I'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.